All right, everybody, welcome back to the Hannah Faulkner Show. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. I'm so excited for you guys to hear from today's guest. Miss Nora joins us to expose communism as she has lived under tyranny, as she has lived under communism, and she's going to share her story with us today. But before I welcome in Miss Nora, make sure you guys are following us on social media. Hannah Faulkner 1776 on Instagram, Hannah F 1776 on Twitter. And yes, I did get a TikTok. I'm totally against TikTok, but I did get it because some people said that if I didn't get it, I wouldn't be reaching the younger generation. So I decided to get it and have someone else manage it, of course, because I'm not going to have the app on my phone. And I don't recommend anyone having their children on the app. But for in case the kids that are on the app and getting flooded with all this Kamala Harris propaganda, I decided to get it and flood their pages with pro-Trump content, and that way they can get the truth, and the truth, not someone else's quote-unquote truth, but the truth. And that's Hannah Faulkner 1776. Our Rumble page is the Hannah Faulkner Show. Make sure you guys are subscribed there. Get yourself some merch from our website, cultureof1776.com. You can use code Patriot to get 10% off your order. And if you are looking for some holistic health options, some alternatives to the things that Big Pharma is prescribing to you and your family members, make sure you guys go and check out my personal naturopath doctor and the supplement line that she just created. It's Burrow Labs. And you can find that at burrowholistichealth.com and use code Hannah10 for 10% off your order. But before I welcome in Miss Nora, I have a few things to show you guys. The first thing is the movie trailer for the Beneath Sheep's Clothing documentary, which is very fitting, considering it is exposing Marxism, communism, and Karl Marx's agenda and the similarities of what we're seeing in America and the things that we saw in many communist countries. So I want you guys to take a look at this.
One of the most consequential lies of history is that Karl Marx put forth an economic theory or doctrine. He did not. He put forth a totalitarian religion. This was a rape of the body of Christ.
He said the ultimate objective was to destroy Christianity. Those are his words.
And Khrushchev bragged about it. We'll take America without firing a shot.
Hi, I'm here to impoverish, enslave, and murder you.
They were actual communists. The result you can see.
We have to stay woke.
There are ravening wolves in sheep's clothing all over the place.
An extremely chilling, very telling documentary as it profoundly lays out the similarities of what's happening in America today with many of our leaders, even Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and the things that they have stated, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, the list goes on, and the similarities of things that even Lenin and Stalin said. It's really sad to see what's happening in our country, but I think this documentary is extremely important. I believe that every American should sit down with their family and watch this documentary as a team and as a family. I think this will awaken you to the truth and really embolden you to stand for what is right in our country and to expose communism and expose what it does to a country. But from this past week, we saw a huge hearing with RFK Jr., Alex Clark, the Food Babe, and several others exposing this chronic disease epidemic that we're seeing in America. I mean, this generation, we're seeing, rise in autism rates, kids struggling with autoimmune disorders, depression, anxiety, and we're kind of wondering what in the world is causing all of this. Well, one of the doctors that day, Casey Means, exposed all of that and more during the hearing. Take a look at this clip.
The message I'm here to share and reiterate is that American health is getting destroyed. It's being destroyed because of chronic illness. And if the current trends continue, if the graphs continue in the way that they're going, at best, we're going to face profound societal instability and decreased American competitiveness. And at worst, we're going to be looking at a genocidal level health collapse in our country and the world. Over the last 50 years in the United States, we have seen rapidly rising rates of chronic illnesses throughout the entire body, the body and the brain: infertility, obesity, type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, heart disease, stroke, autoimmune disease, migraines, mental illness, chronic pain, fatigue, congenital abnormalities, chronic liver disease, autism, and infant and maternal mortality, all going up. Americans live 8 fewer years compared to people in Japan or Switzerland, and life expectancy is going down. I took an oath to do no harm, but listen to these stats. We're not only doing harm, we're flagrantly allowing harm. While it sounds grim, there is very good news. We know why all of these diseases are going up, and we know how to fix it. Every disease I mentioned is caused by or worsened by metabolic dysfunction, a word that it is thrilling to hear being used around this table. Metabolic dysfunction is a fundamental distortion of our cellular biology. It stops our cells from making energy appropriately. According to the American College of Cardiology, metabolic dysfunction now affects 93.2% of American adults. This is, quite literally, the cellular draining of our life force. This process is the result of 3 processes happening inside our cells: mitochondrial dysfunction, a process called oxidative stress, which is like a wildfire inside our cells, and chronic inflammation throughout the body and the gut, as we've heard about. Metabolic dysfunction is largely not a genetic issue. It's caused by toxic American ultra-processed industrial food, toxic American chemicals, toxic American medications, and our toxic sedentary indoor lifestyles. You would think that the American healthcare system and our government agencies would be clamoring to fix metabolic health and reduce American suffering and costs, but they're not. They are deafeningly silent about metabolic dysfunction and its known causes. It's not an overstatement to say that I learned virtually nothing at Stanford Medical School about the tens of thousands of scientific papers that elucidate these root causes of why American health is plummeting and how environmental factors are causing it. For instance, in medical school, I did not learn that for each additional serving of ultra-processed food we eat, early mortality increases by 18%. This now makes up 67% of the foods our kids are eating. I took 0 nutrition courses in medical school. I didn't learn that 82% of independently funded studies show harm from processed food, while 93% of industry-sponsored studies reflect no harm. In medical school, I didn't learn that 95% of the people who created the recent USDA food guidelines for America had significant conflicts of interest with the food industry. I did not learn that 1 billion pounds of synthetic pesticides are being sprayed on our food every single year. 99% of the farmland in the United States is sprayed with synthetic pesticides, many from China and Germany. And these invisible, tasteless chemicals are strongly linked to autism, ADHD, sex hormone disruption, thyroid disease, sperm dysfunction, Alzheimer's, dementia, birth defects, cancer, obesity, liver dysfunction, female infertility, and more, all by hurting our metabolic health. I did not learn that the 8 billion tons of plastic that have been produced just in the last 100 years, plastic was only invented about 100 years ago, are being broken down into microplastics that are now filling our food, our water, and we are now even inhaling them in our air. And that very recent research from just the past couple of months tells us that now about 0.5% of our brains by weight are now plastic. I didn't learn that there are more than 80,000 toxins that have entered our food, water, air, and homes by industry, many of which are banned in Europe, and they are known to alter our gene expression, alter our microbiome composition and the lining of our gut, and disrupt our hormones. I didn't learn that heavy metals like aluminum and lead are present in our food, our baby formula, personal care products, our soil, and many of the mandated medications like vaccines, and that these metals are neurotoxic and inflammatory. I didn't learn that the average American walks a paltry 3,500 steps per day, even though we know, based on science and top journals, that simply walking 7,000 steps a day slashes by 40 to 60% our risk of Alzheimer's, dementia, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and obesity. I certainly did not learn that medical error and medications are the third leading cause of death in the United States. I didn't learn that just 5 nights of sleep deprivation can induce full-blown prediabetes. I learned nothing about sleep, and we're getting about 20% less sleep on average than we were 100 years ago. I didn't learn that American children are getting less time outdoors now than a maximum security prisoner. And on average, adults spend 93% of their time indoors, even though we know from the science that separation from sunlight destroys our circadian biology, and circadian biology dictates our cellular biology. I didn't learn that professional organizations that we get our practice guideline from, like the American Diabetes Association and American Academy of Pediatrics, have taken tens of millions of dollars from Coke, Cadbury, processed food companies, and vaccine manufacturers like Moderna. I didn't learn that if we address these root causes that all lead to metabolic dysfunction and help patients change their food and lifestyle patterns with united, strong voice, we could reverse the chronic disease crisis in America, save millions of lives and trillions of dollars in healthcare costs per year. Instead, doctors are learning that the body is 100 separate parts, and we learn how to drug, we learn how to cut, and we learn how to bill. I'll close by saying that what we are dealing with here is so much more than a physical health crisis. This is a spiritual crisis. We are choosing death over light. We are choosing death over life. We are choosing darkness over light for people and the planet, which are inextricably linked. We are choosing to erroneously believe that we are separate from nature and that we can continue to poison nature and then outsmart it. Our path out will be a renewed respect for the miracle of life and a renewed respect for nature. We can restore health to Americans rapidly with smart policy and courageous leadership. We need a return to courage. We need a return to common sense and intuition. We need a return to awe for the sheer miraculousness of our lives. We need all hands on deck. Thank you.
Now, I have one more thing to show you guys from David Bossie on Real America's Voice as he was exposing and just explaining what's happening in battleground states. Take a look at this.
Pennsylvania, it's a dead heat. Every poll has either Trump up or a tie. Trump is going to win Pennsylvania if we do our jobs. I'm just going to fly through and we'll go back to the states. But I'm in Arizona, another battleground state. Trump has never been behind. Trump is leading in every single poll, and even in the New York Times, which is no friend of anybody that listens to this show, they have him up 5. He has never been behind. He is going to be able to win Arizona. In Georgia, Trump has never been down ever in the state, and he's up anywhere from 3 to 5. Wisconsin, it's a dead heat. And one thing that you know about Wisconsin, the New York Times, which did battleground polls in every state, didn't release one in Wisconsin. It's very interesting to me. How would they just choose that to not do one? Why? Because the numbers aren't good for Kamala Harris in my book. And let's just not forget, in 2020, the Washington Post, the corrupt, media-biased Washington Post, put out a poll within a week of the election that said Joe Biden was up 17 points. What did that do? It suppressed Donald Trump's vote. That was election interference by a media entity without question. Biden, with the help of Zuckerberg and the Zuckbucks, didn't win by 17. He won by 20,000 votes, 1 point. It's outrageous what they do. It's outrageous what the mainstream media does and what they did to Donald Trump in 2020. They're doing it again right now in Nevada. It's a dead heat. I think what Donald Trump has done with the economic message, the no tax on tips, he is going to win back that state, and it is going to be in the win column for Donald Trump. North Carolina, it's a dead heat. Trump is up and is absolutely going to win North Carolina. I don't think that one is as tricky as all the media pundits are going to make it out. Michigan is literally a dead heat and shouldn't be. It's within the margin of error. They basically Harris up 3. It's the hardest to win, but is absolutely doable. Donald Trump is in better shape today in Michigan than he was in 2016 and in 2020. And he just barely didn't pull it off. So we have an opportunity in Michigan. We have an opportunity in Virginia. Virginia is even within the margin of error. It has him down 4 points in Virginia. So Donald Trump, the point of this message is Donald Trump is on offense. Kamala Harris is on defense.
I love what he said because he profoundly laid out, what is happening across our country in these battleground states. I think it's important for us to understand, especially as we're approaching one of the most pivotal, the most important elections that we've seen in human history. It's so important that we get out, we vote early, we get to the polls, we encourage our friends to register to vote. Make sure that you guys know that you can only register to vote up to 30 days before the election in many states. So get registered to vote immediately. Encourage all of your friends, your grandchildren, and your children to get registered to vote and vote early this October. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Miss Nora. Tune in. All right, Nora. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Hannah Faulkner Show today. This issue is one that is very close to my heart. It's so sad to see so many people, specifically within my generation, that have been duped on these issues: Marxism, communism, socialism, believing that there can be true freedom within these ideologies, and there's no freedom in any of those mentioned. So I'm excited to talk to you today. I appreciate you coming on the show.
I'm very excited to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I feel honored and delighted to be here and to be able to share my experience and my thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, right now you are in Bulgaria, right?
Yes.
It's amazing. Well, for my listeners that maybe haven't heard your story, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your story coming from Bulgaria to America, your journey, and even maybe just your why behind now, getting on podcasts, writing, all of these things on the differences between communism and the American value, socialism, and what these things do to a country and to a people. So if you don't mind sharing your story, that would be great.
Yeah, I would be very happy to share that. So I grew up in Bulgaria under communism, and I was 18 basically in my last year of high school when the Berlin Wall collapsed, and I witnessed how democracy was restored, how freedom was restored, and it's a slow process. And I witnessed many people in my home country of Bulgaria being sent to camps, being imprisoned. We weren't really able to even tell a joke. So, and then I graduated from university in Bulgaria. I'm a classicist by education. I've always been interested in ancient history, and that gives one a different perspective, seeing that our world was not created yesterday. So it allows people to see what's going on and to evaluate historical events and processes from a different prism. So I was absolutely delighted when communism collapsed in Eastern Europe, and I participated in many peaceful rallies expressing my desire for freedom. And then I graduated to university in Bulgaria. That was in the early 90s. Then I went to London, did a master's degree there. And then I was very fortunate because I won a Fulbright fellowship to do a doctorate in the States. And I always admired America. And I was really absolutely delighted to have this opportunity. So I did my doctorate, and then I got a job. And then one thing led to another. I met a wonderful man, got married, and we have a young son who is now almost 19. So I settled in the United States and basically achieved the American dream. And even since day one, I was absolutely impressed by how welcoming people were, how appreciative. I've been in Europe, Western Europe before, but never have had I seen such meritocracy and lack of prejudice whatsoever. So I was treated as an equal and judged based on my skills and what I brought to the table. So that is uniquely American, and I hope it stays that way.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, I think it's so important. I talk about communism a lot, and I'm really big on the fact that if we don't stop this, will be under a communist regime in America, like many other communist countries have faced. I always enjoy having people that have seen what communism looks like with their own eyes. I'm not sure if you know Jennifer Zhang, Xi Van Fleet, both from China, lived under Mao's Cultural Revolution. And I think your story, their stories, and others are very powerful because, especially to my generation, as a 17-year-old, you said you have a 19-year-old. To our generation, your son and I's generation, I mean, these are the stories that they need to hear. I mean, you see these teenagers protesting at college campuses. They have no idea what they're standing for. I've been to one of a local college campuses here in Tennessee. I went to, and these kids are just, we love communism. We love Karl Marx. They have the Communist Manifesto laid out on their table. But when it comes to actually defining what this actually is, it's a dictatorship essentially, where we are separating people by the oppressed versus the oppressor. It is a very satanic agenda that they have. It is evil. It is oppressive. And I really hope that people within my generation and people in general will wake up to it. But I mean, talk from your experience, as you were a teenager in high school, looking and seeing what communism looked like, now coming to America. I mean, what are the big differences that you're seeing? I mean, just for my audience to understand.
So to me, the essential difference between communism or National Socialism, for that matter, basically totalitarian socialism, and American values, and I believe that America really embodies the best traditions ever of human governance, going back to Athens, Jerusalem. So we have the Greek idea of democracy. Then we have the biblical idea that human beings have intrinsic values. They're created in the image of God. Life is valuable, and any human is valuable and equal. So these are very important parts of why America is what it is. So the very idea that people are born with God-given rights, this is an amazing philosophy that was built into the founding of our country. And that is the basic difference, the idea that people have innate natural rights and the government should only serve to protect those rights, as opposed to socialism, where people are treated as cogs that are part of a big machine, and they're only useful insofar as they can serve some vague social good. So that's a collectivistic agenda that takes away the basic human rights, the right to freedom, property, and ultimately the right to life. So this is why totalitarian socialism is an evil ideology and an extremely dangerous one, and it's the exact opposite of American values.
That's right. Well, something that you talk about a lot is the twisting of language, the manipulation of language. And I see that a lot in our society right now, and even in America, which is very unfortunate because we are getting closer to communism. And I mean, many of our leaders, I have never had a conversation with you before this, but even if you're looking at, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, if you're looking at what's happening to Donald Trump right now, and not just him, but many other people running for office, many other activists, influencers, the silencing, the censorship, the persecution that they're facing is what happens in communist countries. That is the beginning of what happens, the silencing of our freedom of speech. And this is very dangerous. I mean, even on the girls' sports issue, I know several young athletes that were told that if they dare to speak up against a male competing on their team or going into their bathroom, that not only will they be hateful, not only would they be imposing hate speech onto that male identifying as a woman, but they would potentially lose future opportunities, and they would be silenced and lose their scholarships, which is silencing. Of course, that's censorship. And that is taking away, that is infringing upon our freedom of speech as American citizens, something that is so unique. Like you said, it's not given to us by man, it's given to us by God. It's natural law, founded within our Constitution. But I mean,
Yeah.
talking about the torture, the manipulation of language, I mean, what does that mean to you? How have you seen the manipulation of language in your own country, but now also in America?
Yeah, it's very well described, of course, in George Orwell's 1994, The Newspeak. And for people who have lived through this, it's very clear to recognize all the talking points of this narrative.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, to many people, and paradoxically, sometimes the more educated they are, the more difficult it is for them to recognize that. I think it was President Reagan who talked about leftist intellectuals saying the problem with my learned friends is not that they're ignorant, but they know so much that isn't so. This is the biggest problem of the pretty much pro-communist elites. So language is probably the most powerful weapon that any system might have. And totalitarian socialists, both the Nazis and the communists, are masterful manipulators. But the communists, because they lasted longer, they have surpassed the National Socialists in disguising the evil nature of their ideology. So from day one, even going back to Marx, there is nothing really wonderful about that ideology, because Marx himself, who by the way was not a very good scholar, he was a lazy person who, he was a good writer and certainly a smart person, but he had no idea what he was talking about. He talked about the working class. He never worked almost a day in his life. He did work actually paradoxically for the New York Times. He was supposed to write articles for them, and he couldn't even finish that. He couldn't even submit the articles. So he was supported by Engels, by other people. So he's really not a good example. He was terrible with his family, the way he treated his servant. So even in his own ideology, he talks about dictatorship of the proletariat. So from day one, there's violence. So this idea of brotherhood, equality was supposed to be implemented by basically getting rid of anybody who stood in the way. And that's exactly what happened in communist countries. He also gave a famous speech in London, I believe the year was 1844, and he gives an example with an illegal tribunal in medieval Germany, where if people didn't like somebody, they would mark a red cross on this person's house, and then the person would be basically sentenced and killed or dealt with. So he talks about communism and is saying all the houses are in Europe are now marked with this mysterious red cross. History is the judge, the proletarian is the executioner. So from day one, they talk about violence, no question about that. So there's violence, there's also moral relativism. So there's no such thing as absolute truth. Of course, they despise traditional religion and any objective morality derived from God. So Marxists, they like to twist whatever concept they're dealing with to serve their narrative. So we see that, as you mentioned, there's this antagonism between victims and oppressors, and these categories change all the time. It used to be the working class. That's not useful anymore, because the working class, obviously, people like to work to provide for their families, so they appreciate the free market system. Now it's women are perceived as oppressed, people who are not white are perceived as oppressed. There are all these ever multiplying categories of victims as oppressors. And of course, there have been a lot of injustices and horrible things, such as slavery, no question about that. But what Marxists do, they twist and transpose things, manipulate language, and sometimes they use a term, but the meaning that's inserted into this term is the exact opposite of what the actual meaning is. And in this way, they manage to really manipulate people, and they've truly taken over public education, the media, the mainstream media, Hollywood, even athletic organizations, as you mentioned. So it is very scary, but I also believe that our system is strong enough to withstand that. And I'm absolutely delighted to see young people like yourself who actually are patriotic. They appreciate Western civilization. They appreciate freedom, and that gives me hope. In a way, I think maybe people of your generation are more aware than the so-called millennials. I'm not sure if haven't studied the statistics, but I see more people being more patriotic and more conservative even.
In today's healthcare landscape, the CDC, the medical industry, and big pharma rely on complex pharmaceutical regimens that oftentimes leave Americans searching for more and more medications. That is why I am proud to support and partner with my doctor, Dr. Susanna Underwood, a board-certified naturopath and master herbalist. Dr. Underwood has created her own private line of supplements, Burrow Labs, to deliver real solutions through the highest quality and efficacy. At Burrow Labs, each supplement is strategically designed by Dr. Underwood to cater to not just the individual, but the general public, ensuring effective results rather than just putting a Band-Aid on the symptom, which is often what big pharma and the medical industry tend to do. It's time to stop settling for subpar health solutions and start experiencing the benefits that come from supplements that deliver real results. Visit burrowholistichealth.com to learn more. All right, Freedom Warriors, if you're like me, then you are absolutely fed up with all of these companies going woke, buying into DEI, affirmative action, and supporting men like Dylan Mulvaney, who think they are women, who are absolutely mentally delusional, putting on a caricature and a fetish of womanhood. You are not a woman, you will always be a man. If you're fed up, then you're gonna wanna support a company like Freedom 2.0. This is the first freedom-fighting conservative water bottle company. And this is more than just a water bottle. This is a company that is rejecting these woke ideologies and saying enough is enough. They are embracing freedom of speech, embracing what our founding fathers intended our country to be, and they're continuing to speak freely. I'm excited to be partnering with them. Make sure you guys go and get your Freedom 2.0 water. Don't be lame. Get your Freedom 2.0 water. God bless. Yeah, that's right. No, it is very sad. And too, I think a lot of times, just even within the older generations, in America specifically, a lot of them assume that since they lived during those times, they understand what happened. But then you to get talking with them, I'm sure you've had conversations, and they're like, no, that's actually not what that means. You even talk about the feminist movement and gender ideology. A lot of people really just think that this is something that's happened within the past 5-10 years, but they have been very intricately placing this into our institutions for the past, century, really. You look at John Money, that was in the early 1900s. Yeah. And too, a lot of people think that these ideologies kind of stemmed from America, but a lot of them did come from Eastern Europe. And communist countries, because the ideas of gender ideology, the idea of feminism, of climate change, all of these ideas that they're using, in order for Marxism to work, they have to use ideologies such as gender ideology, feminism, all of these different movements to push and create cultural Marxism in America or wherever the society may be. And I think it's interesting too. You look at writings from past communist countries, a lot of them really push this idea of liberation or free love. Like, we really want you to be liberated. We really want you to be truly free, because right now you aren't free. That's something that a lot of the ladies that I've had on my show that have experienced communism under Maoism and other countries too, they say, they start off saying that you are not as free as we can allow you to be free. I'm sure that you've seen that, where they say, we want you to truly be liberated. And of course, it's all a lie. It's manipulation tactics. It's what it is. They are manipulating us in their twisting language, as you talk about. But I'm curious, from your perspective, how far do you think, if we continue to allow this to happen, and enough Americans, which I'm hopeful, I do believe enough people are waking up, they're realizing that we have been lied to, we are being manipulated, and it's time to say enough, it's time to take a stand. But if we don't, how far off do you think America is from being under a full-on communist regime?
Well, it's really hard to tell, and I would like to be optimistic, not because I'm not aware of the seriousness of the situation I am, but I believe that it's almost part of the American DNA to be truly attached to freedom. And even people who are on the left if you try to take away their rights, they'll immediately protest. They're simply not used to being treated in that way. And I actually find the PragerU very useful and interesting, and I listen to some of their shows. This is something that Dennis Prager says, but other people as well. And I've always agreed with this, that there's a difference between liberals in the sense of classical liberals or libertarians for that matter, and Marxists. And I think that there can be a really good balance in a political system between conservative values and attitudes and liberal ones. And freedom is important as much as tradition is important, and attachment to something that is intransient. So that's a good thing, and that's a normal balance. But Marxism and totalitarian socialism, these are not normal attitudes, normal doctrines, and they're really dangerous. So they should be. So I'm really unhappy when I hear people talking about extreme left, extreme right. These terms don't really work well, because there is nothing traditional or conservative about National Socialism. It rejected tradition, it rejected Christianity, and there's nothing really free or about communism if we think of it as extreme liberalism. It's not liberal, it's quite illiberal. So what gives me hope is that I believe that probably 80% of American people are not supporting Marxism, and they do not hate America. But those who do are very vocal. And that's also part of, for example, Saul Alinsky and other Marxists. They talked about their playbook. If you have one person, he tries to have the voice of 10. So they pretend to be much more powerful and influential than they actually are. They're truly vociferous, that's for sure. So I think that probably 80% of people, and we have, this is probably the only country in the world where half the country is normal, conservative, traditional, common sense people. That's unique. That gives me hope. There's no other country like that. So you have half the country that's actually very pro-American, very patriotic. And the other half, I think at least maybe of the remaining 50%, 30% are probably classical liberals or liberals. So they could entertain other points of view and they respect America. They're just not aware to what extent what they read in the media, in the mainstream media, is absolute propaganda similar to what happened during communism. They refuse to admit, because they're obviously, a lot of them are quite educated and intelligent, they refuse to admit that they're being lied to. I think that's one of the biggest problems. But I think a lot of these people are actually decent, and sooner or later they would realize what's going on. In fact, I think some are already waking up after these absolutely horrible instances of anti-Semitism on our campuses. I actually gave a lecture about that recently and explain where current anti-Semitism comes from. Of course, it's also related to anti-Western ideology and Marxism. So I think people are seeing that, and they're starting to have some reservations. So I am hopeful, but then again, we'll see what will happen.
That's right. That's right. I'm curious, and I'm sure my listeners are too. Have you faced a significant amount of persecution and pushback from, I mean, even the right? Sometimes people on the right and conservatives will start to push back and say, "Oh, this is not something that we need to get into." I'm excited because I see people finally realizing that this actually is happening, and if we don't say no, then it's going to take over, just like it did your country. So, I mean, what kind of pushback have you received since sharing your story and really just exposing this corruption and the way that they're twisting language?
Well, I tried to talk to people informally, and ever since I think the pandemic, I realized that it's my duty to speak up.
Right.
And I've lost some friends, unfortunately, who unfriended me. But other people, including liberals, they actually can hear me out, and they understand at least where I'm coming from. So that's why I think that we should try to differentiate between Marxism and such absolutely illiberal movements, and people who are open-minded. They may be misguided, but they're open to listening, and they do not like communism. So there's a difference. So I guess especially because I spent decades of my life in academia, and one reason why I no longer work in academia is because I felt disappointed, and I kept arguing with people, telling them that communism is a horrible system, that Marxism is a bad ideology, and then people wouldn't agree with me, and they would try to push a Marxist agenda. So I didn't think that was a useful application of my time. But I keep talking to people. Maybe I'm annoying them a little bit, but I think that if we can change even one mind, it's worth it.
Right. That's exactly right. I always say, the most important thing is having these conversations. I mean, if we really want to change our culture, we have to engage with both sides, and educate them, because a lot of these people and a lot of these young people have no idea. So just having a civil conversation about this, really just opening up their minds and allowing them to be receptive, and even ourselves being receptive to maybe their story, what led them to believing in these ideologies and accepting them. So I totally agree. I think it's so important just having those 101 conversations with these people, and just educating them on right versus wrong, moral versus evil, and the truth. Because, like you said, in Marxism, there is no such thing as objective truth. So first, just getting them to recognize that there is such thing as objective truth, and that in order for our society to truly thrive, we have to have a level of morality. And that's what happens in Marxism, is they just throw morality out the window, as you said earlier. But what is your message, specifically to Americans, maybe to young people, going forward? Maybe, obviously, I know you're very optimistic about what's coming forward, because the silent majority is getting loud. They're fed up. They're excited for the future, and they're seeing what these communist Democrats, as I call them. I don't even know if you talk about Democrat versus Republican, but I do. I call them, communist Democrats. You see what's happened with Donald Trump and everything with his trials, and what they're doing. But what is your message to young people and American people as a whole?
Well, my message is to try to truly appreciate what the United States stands for, and to try to truly learn the founding principles of the United States, and to get informed and learn the true facts, because most of the history that's being taught is basically following Howard Zinn's anti-American Marxist viewpoint. So this is not American history. So people should try to get educated. Nowadays, there are all these conservative or libertarian, or at least free media sources. And young people should try to learn the truth, or at least listen to a different viewpoint. And if they truly want, my other message is they should not support anything without knowing what it stands for. So they shouldn't be wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt without knowing that he was basically an executioner and mass murderer. So I think that everybody who tries to say how wonderful communism is maybe should try going to North Korea and living there for a while, and then if he comes back alive, continue to support it. But I find it quite disingenuous and harmful, especially for people who have really nice, comfortable, luxurious lifestyles, to go on supporting socialism. So they should learn the facts. They could, for example, read the Black Book of Communism. In fact, my husband and I were fortunate to establish a charity in Bulgaria. There's also an American partner charity, and we try to bring people together, especially young people. And American people can come to our charity where I'm located right now and learn more about Bulgaria. And the communist period is of special interest. In fact, we received various archival materials with documents about camp survivors. So they should, we supported a documentary, about 1 hour long, interviews with people who survived communist gulag camps. I think anybody who is an honest person and sees that can no longer support communism. So people should really try to learn what it was. Or, for example, listen to a person like Yeon-mi Park from North Korea, who tells her story. People should count their blessings being in the United States. It's easy to criticize, but it is, as Lincoln said, the last best hope on earth, and people shouldn't forget that.
That's right. No, we truly are blessed. I think one of the reasons we've gotten ourselves here is we've taken the freedoms and liberties that we have for granted. I mean, we have forgotten where the blessing comes from. It comes from God. I mean, this nation has truly been blessed with some of the most unique ideas. I mean, the entire reason we came here, the entire reason we left England was for religious liberty, was for freedom. We wanted to get away from tyranny and from control and oppression. And I think that's what a lot of, and even to this day, countries people from all across the world come to America to escape communism, to escape tyranny. They want to come to America. If America was so bad, nobody would be coming here. But America truly is such a beautiful nation, and I'm grateful to live here. You know, I've been to other countries. I've seen what a third world country looks like. I've seen what devastation looks like in a country that is just it's different. And it makes you thankful. I think it makes you very, very grateful for the ability to live in the United States of America, to get up, to go wherever you want, to go to wherever school you want, whatever church you want, whatever grocery store, something as simple as that even some people today can't even get to choose which grocery store they go to. So it's truly just such a blessing to live in America. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I think I could be wrong, and maybe the people will fact check me, but 1/3 of the world's population doesn't know if they'll eat a meal today. And we take some of the smallest things for granted every single day, just forgetting that we get to have a meal every single day. I mean, even if you look at homeless people in America, we're still so much blessed. The homeless people in America are still even more blessed than those that live in third world countries, because there's just so much poverty and there's so much opportunity in the United States of America. So I appreciate you saying that. Nora, where can my listeners find you if they want to read the stuff you're putting out? Maybe if you publish a book in the future, Lord willing, where can they find you?
Well, I do have a Facebook account, Instagram, but I have to admit I'm not using social media very much, but I'm happy to share my contact information if anybody is interested. And if I think that a lot of young people may find my little booklet, Quarantine Reflections Across Two Worlds, helpful, because it's a comparison between communism and what life was like under communism, and basically achieving the American dream. And it's very short. I know some people are too busy or don't like to read very much, but it's available anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, even from the publisher. So I think that if people were interested, they could read that, and I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions and help in any way I can.
Amazing. Nora, thank you so much for what you're doing. I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, and it was an honor, and I also appreciate very much what you're doing and reaching out to young audiences, and good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, share this with your friends and family. Make sure you guys are following us on all of our social medias so that you do not miss an announcement or any exciting updates with the show. We'll have all the links in the description below. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. Stay in the fight. Stay encouraged. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.